The streets of Tehran are quieter now. After the most lethal episode of state violence in Iran's contemporary history this past January, public demonstrations have largely disappeared. But silence does not mean stability. As internal repression tightens, the regional temperature is rising. U.S. naval assets are repositioning, diplomatic channels are intensifying, and high-stakes talks are scheduled for this Friday. The question is no longer whether tensions exist. It is whether this moment represents deterrence or the prelude to escalation. In the weeks following January's crackdown, thousands were reportedly detained. Communication blackouts expanded. Digital restrictions intensified. Mass arrests and censorship have reshaped the public sphere. Political expression has narrowed. Online platforms are increasingly monitored. Civil society activity has contracted. The strategy appears clear: restore order through containment. Yet repression carries long-term costs. Sustained internal control often shifts political tension underground rather than resolving it. Public silence can mask structural instability, and when domestic fragility intersects with regional confrontation, volatility multiplies. Parallel to Iran's internal tightening is a visible shift in U.S. military posture. Additional naval deployments, strategic bomber rotations, missile defense repositioning across Gulf bases. Washington describes these moves as defensive. But in geopolitical signaling, posture is policy. The central debate among security analysts: is this a prelude to intervention or a calibrated form of coercive diplomacy? Coercive diplomacy aims to pressure adversaries into concessions without crossing the threshold into open conflict. It relies on credible force projection while leaving room for negotiation. With talks scheduled for Friday, the buildup may serve as leverage rather than preparation for war. Still, history shows that military proximity increases the risk of miscalculation. And in a region as sensitive as the Persian Gulf, even limited incidents can spiral. Amid rising tensions, two regional actors have stepped forward: Turkey and Qatar. Both maintain diplomatic channels with Tehran and Washington. Both seek to prevent escalation that could destabilize energy markets and regional trade corridors. Qatar has historically positioned itself as a quiet mediator, maintaining lines of communication during periods of confrontation. Turkey, balancing NATO membership with independent regional policy, sees instability in Iran as directly affecting its own strategic environment. Their mediation efforts underscore a broader truth: regional powers increasingly act as stabilizers when global powers confront one another. Whether their diplomacy succeeds may determine whether Friday's talks produce de-escalation or simply delay confrontation. Beyond politics lies economics. Roughly a fifth of global oil shipments transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Any escalation involving Iran would immediately reverberate through global energy markets. Insurance premiums rise, shipping routes reroute, commodity prices fluctuate. For Europe and Asia, already managing supply chain fragility, stability in the Gulf remains essential. Geopolitical tension in choke points like Hormuz often impacts markets faster than policy responses can adapt. This is why diplomacy here is not regional, it is global. Iran now faces a dual pressure system. Internally, tightened control and constrained civic space. Externally, military signaling and diplomatic deadlines. Leadership in Tehran must balance deterrence with domestic legitimacy. Washington must balance pressure with credibility. And mediators must balance urgency with restraint. The convergence of these dynamics makes this week pivotal. Hovering over these tensions is the unresolved nuclear file. Iran's enrichment capacity, inspection access, and compliance disputes remain central to Western security concerns. Any military buildup in the region is inseparable from this strategic backdrop. If Friday's talks reopen even limited nuclear transparency measures, markets may stabilize. If they collapse, escalation risks compound. In this context, military posture is not just deterrence. It is leverage tied directly to nuclear diplomacy. Iran's silent streets should not be mistaken for resolution. Silence can precede reform or rupture. The U.S. buildup may be strategic signaling. It may also be leverage before negotiation. Turkey and Qatar's mediation may contain escalation, or reveal the limits of regional diplomacy. Ultimately, this moment reflects a broader geopolitical pattern. Internal repression and external confrontation are increasingly intertwined. How this unfolds will shape not only Iran's trajectory, but the security architecture of the Middle East. For deeper analysis on Middle East security, coercive diplomacy, and global energy risk assessments, visit nexusinsight.org. Explore the Nexus Insight blog for expert insights, in-depth research, and contextual analysis on the forces shaping the global economy and international relations.